A broke casino waitress found a dying girl in the rain. Then the most feared crime boss in Las Vegas answered the phone. Grace Holloway had $14 to her name, an eviction notice waiting at home, and one last bus she could not afford to miss. But behind a closed wedding chapel beneath the bleeding neon lights, she heard a child whisper one word: "Daddy." The girl was freezing, barely breathing, and wearing the silver falcon of Adrian Cross, a man powerful enough to make police officers look away. Grace should have run. Instead, she made the call that would drag her into a world of armed loyalty, buried grief, and a love dangerous enough to destroy an empire. Stay until the end, because this is not only a story about saving a child. It is about what happens when kindness enters a heart built for war, like the video and comment where you are watching from. 24 hours before Grace Holloway knelt in the rain with Adrian Cross's dying daughter in her arms, she woke to cold air moving across her face. The window above her mattress had never closed properly. Wind slipped through the damaged frame and stirred the thin curtain like someone breathing behind it. Beyond the glass, Las Vegas was still awake. A siren cried somewhere east of downtown. Tires hissed along wet pavement. Music thumped through the wall from an apartment where the night had not yet ended. Grace opened her eyes and stared at the brown water stains spreading across the ceiling. The digital clock on the floor read 4:47 in the morning. She had slept for 3 hours and 11 minutes. Her body felt heavier than the blanket covering it. Her feet throbbed before they touched the floor. The scar beneath her ribs tightened when she sat up, a pale reminder of the night a masked man had entered the Desert Star diner with a knife and left Grace bleeding beside the coffee machine. She pressed her palm against the scar until the pain loosened. On the floor beside her mattress lay an envelope with red letters stamped across the front. Final notice. Grace had opened it the night before. She had read every line twice, then placed it face down as though the words might disappear from shame. They had not. The rent was 8 weeks late. Payment was required by Friday. If the balance remained unpaid, eviction proceedings would begin. Grace reached for her phone. $14.36 remained in her account. A hospital collector had left 6 messages yesterday. Another company had called about the loan Evan Cole had convinced her to sign 3 years earlier, back when she still believed promises made in bed meant something in daylight. Evan had called her strong. At the time, she thought it was admiration. Later, she understood that some people praised your strength because they were already planning how much weight they could place on your back. Grace stood and crossed the narrow room. Her apartment consisted of a mattress, a small table, a metal clothing rack, and a kitchenette where the faucet coughed before releasing cloudy water. She opened the cabinet. Instant coffee, stale crackers, half a jar of peanut butter. She chose the coffee. Food required time to taste. Coffee only required a throat. While the water heated, Grace dressed in black pants and a white blouse for her casino shift. The blouse had been washed so often that the fabric had thinned near the buttons. She covered the worn places with her vest. Her shoes were splitting near the soles. She had cut 2 pieces from an old cereal box and placed them inside to keep the rain from reaching her socks. The cardboard had already softened. Grace tied her dark hair into a knot and studied herself in the bathroom mirror. Green eyes, pale skin. A faint purple mark around her wrist where a customer had grabbed her the previous evening. She looked older than 28, not old in years. Old in the way a door looked after too many people had kicked it. One more day, she whispered. It was what she told herself every morning. Not because she believed the next day would be kinder. One more day was simply the smallest promise she knew how to keep. Grace locked her apartment and stepped into the hallway. The building smelled of cigarettes, fried onions, and wet carpet. Near the stairs, Ruth Delaney was struggling with 2 bags of cleaning supplies. Ruth was 63 and worked the early shift at a hotel near the airport. Her silver hair was tucked beneath a knitted cap. Her knees hurt, but she refused to take the elevator because it made a sound she did not trust. Ruth looked Grace over. "You eat, I will. That means no. I have food. Coffee is not food." Grace reached for one of Ruth's bags. "Let me carry that." Ruth pulled it away and placed a wrapped breakfast sandwich in Grace's empty hand. "I cannot take this." "You can. You need it. I packed two." Grace looked at the shape beneath the foil. "You always pack one." Ruth's eyes narrowed with affection. "Pride is expensive, honey. You cannot afford it today." Grace wanted to argue. Instead, she held the sandwich carefully. "Thank you." Ruth touched her cheek. "This city takes pieces from people. Do not help it." Outside, the morning was dark and cold. Las Vegas looked different before sunrise. The bright towers of the Strip still burned against the sky, but away from the casinos, the city showed its tired face. Storefront gates were locked. Trash rolled along the curbs. Men in work boots waited beneath bus shelters while women in hotel uniforms checked the time and rubbed warmth into their hands. Grace ate half the sandwich on the bus and wrapped the rest for later. At 6:15, she entered the Silver Crown Casino through the employee entrance. The public side of the casino smelled of perfume, polished wood, and money. Crystal lights glittered above rows of gaming tables. Music played without pause. There were no clocks on the walls and no windows near the gaming floor. The Silver Crown did not want anyone to remember that the world outside continued without them. The employee corridors were another story. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, security cameras, people changing shoes while walking because stopping meant being late. Grace tied on her apron and entered the restaurant just before the breakfast rush. For 4 hours, she moved without rest. Coffee, eggs, juice, toast, smiles. She carried plates to men who lost more money before breakfast than she earned in a year. She wiped crumbs from tables while women in diamond bracelets complained that the orange juice tasted ordinary. A man at table 12 snapped his fingers whenever his cup was less than half full. Another asked Grace whether her smile cost extra. She answered neither question. Near noon, Brent Malloy called her into the service corridor. Brent was the floor supervisor. He was 40, recently divorced, and carried bitterness like an aftershave. His suit always fit too tightly across the shoulders. His smile changed depending on how much power he believed he had over the person standing in front of him. He leaned against the supply room door. "You have been avoiding me. I have been working. You know what I mean." Grace kept one hand on her tray. "I do not." Brent stepped closer. "I can give you the private lounge shifts, better tips, fewer tables. That would be useful." His gaze moved slowly over her face. "People who help me usually find that I help them." Grace felt the old alertness rise inside her. Her pulse remained steady, but every part of her attention narrowed toward the distance between his body and the door. "What kind of help?" Brent smiled. The answer was in the way he placed his palm against the frame blocking the corridor. Grace stared at his hand. "Move." His smile faded slightly. "You always make things harder than they need to be." "No. Men like you make consequences sound like favors." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then a kitchen door opened at the far end of the corridor. Voices spilled into the hallway. Brent stepped aside. Grace walked past him without looking back. An hour later, the revised schedule appeared in the employee break room. 2 of her shifts were gone. Grace stood before the paper while conversations moved around her. Someone laughed near the lockers. A dishwasher argued with his girlfriend on the phone. A cook opened a bag of chips. Grace calculated silently. Without those shifts, she would miss rent again. Without rent, she would lose the apartment. Without the apartment, the hospital letters would not know where to find her, which was almost funny. Brent passed behind her. "Business is slow." Grace turned. "The private lounge has 6 open shifts. Those require flexibility." He held her gaze. Grace wanted to tear the schedule from the wall. She wanted to tell every woman in the room what he had done. Instead, she photographed the schedule with her phone. Brent noticed. His expression changed. Grace slipped the phone into her pocket. "What are you doing?" "Remembering." She finished her shift at 2:30 and took 2 buses toward the Desert Star diner. By then, the rain had begun. The Desert Star sat near an old stretch of highway beyond the main glow of the Strip. Its neon sign showed a red star with one broken point. The windows rattled when trucks passed. Half the booths had been repaired with silver tape. Grace changed in the restroom and tied a faded blue apron around her waist. Her manager, Stan Mercer, barely looked up from the register. "You are late." Grace checked the clock. "I am 4 minutes early." Stan shrugged. "Your face looks late." The dinner rush arrived at 5. Truck drivers, nurses, construction workers, students, and gamblers who had lost enough money to crave cheap eggs filled the booths. Grace poured coffee, carried burgers, and listened to people speak about their lives as though she were part waitress and part confessional wall. An elderly man asked for 2 forks with 1 slice of pie because his wife had died last winter, and he had not learned how to order for one. Grace brought him 2 forks without comment. A young mother counted coins before ordering soup for herself and chicken fingers for her son. Grace told the kitchen the second meal had been returned by another customer and could not be sold. It was a lie. She paid for it from her tips. At 9, 4 men came in smelling of whiskey. They were loud before they reached the booth. One wore a college sweatshirt over a body too old for college. Another slapped the table every time he laughed. The third kept calling Grace sweetheart. The fourth watched her with the lazy confidence of someone who had never considered that a woman might be afraid of him. Grace took their order and kept her voice flat. When she returned with coffee, the man in the sweatshirt caught her wrist. "Smile for us." Grace looked at his fingers around her skin. "Let go." He grinned. "Come on. We are being friendly. You are hurting me." The table became quiet. Then the men laughed. Stan stood behind the register watching. He did nothing. Grace pulled her wrist free. The man leaned back, sensitive. She set down the coffee and walked away. 10 minutes later, the same man knocked the pot from her hand. Hot coffee struck the table and splashed across her apron. He laughed as if it had been an accident. The 4 men left without paying half the bill. Stan approached while Grace wiped the floor. "You need to control your attitude." He grabbed me. "He was a customer. He walked out. Then the balance comes out of your tips." Grace stopped wiping. For several seconds she heard nothing but the rain against the windows. The scar beneath her ribs tightened. She remembered lying on this same floor 2 years earlier, blood spreading beneath her body while Stan hid in the office and waited for the robber to leave. She remembered waking in the hospital with no insurance and a debt large enough to follow her longer than the knife wound. Grace stood. "He stole from you. You upset him. He grabbed me." Stan sighed as though she were exhausting him. "Life gets easier when you stop making every problem personal." Grace looked at the wet floor between them. Men always say that when the problem belongs to a woman. She returned to work. By 11:30, the diner was almost empty. Grace counted her tips in the supply room. $31 after the unpaid bill. She placed $14 in her wallet for groceries and rent. The rest had to cover transportation until her next casino shift. When she clocked out, Stan called after her. "You keep talking like that, you will not last here." Grace put on her thin coat. "I almost died here. Lasting is not the same as living." She stepped into the rain before he answered. Across the city, Lily Cross sat on the carpet of her bedroom and watched children run beneath a tunnel of golden lights. The television advertisement showed the Fremont Winter Lights Festival. Families moved through the crowded street in bright coats. A musician played beneath a canopy. Vendors poured hot chocolate into paper cups. A little girl chased bubbles while her father pretended not to notice the chocolate on her face. Lily leaned closer. Her room was warm enough that she wore no socks. Shelves held books, dolls, paints, puzzles, and music boxes. Her bed had white curtains. Her windows overlooked the city from behind thick glass. Everything around her had been chosen with care. Nothing had been chosen by her. Her nanny, Claire Benson, brushed Lily's blonde hair. "Can I go there?" Claire followed her gaze to the television. "No, sweetheart." "Why?" "Your father says crowds are not safe. What if we go when it is not crowded? Then the festival would be closed." Lily frowned. "I want to see something that was not built only for me." Claire's hand stopped for a moment. Near the bedroom door, a guard shifted his weight. Lily looked toward him. "Have you been there?" The guard glanced at Claire. "Once." "Was it dangerous?" He thought about the answer. It was loud. That is not the same thing. The guard almost smiled. Claire resumed brushing. "You have lights in the East Garden. They turn on when Daddy tells them to. That does not make them less beautiful." Lily looked back at the television. "It makes them mine before I choose them." Later, Adrian entered her room carrying a book. The guards straightened when he passed. Claire lowered her eyes and left quietly. Adrian Cross was feared in every casino office, private club, and courthouse corridor in Las Vegas. In Lily's room, he removed his suit jacket and sat on the carpet. "You are still awake. I was waiting. For me." For the next chapter. Adrian opened the book. Lily turned her back toward him and handed him a ribbon. "My braid came loose." Adrian stared at her hair as though it were a complicated weapon. "I believe Claire is better qualified. She has gone to bed. That sounds planned." Lily smiled. Adrian gathered her hair and attempted the braid. It leaned to one side. Lily touched it. "This is terrible. It is structurally sound. It looks frightened." For the first time that day, Adrian laughed. The sound was brief and unfamiliar in the guarded house. Lily leaned against him. "Daddy." "Yes, little star. Is the world outside always dangerous?" Adrian's hands became still. Beyond the bedroom door, men with weapons stood beneath hidden cameras. Beyond the estate walls, enemies watched his companies, his roots, his weaknesses. Lily was the only weakness he could not conceal. "Not always," he said. "Then why can I not see the parts that are not?" Adrian looked toward the window. He remembered Isabel in a hospital bed, her face losing color while doctors moved around her. He remembered offering money, influence, blood, anything. Nothing had saved her. When Lily was born, Adrian made himself a promise. The world would never take his daughter from him. He had not understood that promises built from terror could become cages. "One day," he said. Lily pulled away. "Grown-ups say one day when they mean no." Adrian closed the book. "I do not mean no. Then take me tomorrow." He looked at her. She looked back with Isabel's gray eyes. "I cannot." Lily nodded once. The disappointment on her face was quiet. That made it worse. Adrian kissed her forehead and left after she closed her eyes. Lily waited until the hallway became silent. She waited until Claire checked the room one final time. She waited until the guard rotation changed near the west staircase. Then she got out of bed. She put on her white wool coat and slipped her mother's silver music box into one pocket. Her phone went into the other. For years, Lily had watched doors open and close around her. She knew which guard spoke too long during shift changes. She knew which cameras turned slowly near the service corridor. She knew catering vehicles entered through the south gate whenever Adrian hosted late meetings. Children raised behind locks learned the shape of every key. Lily moved through the hallway without making a sound. At the service entrance, workers loaded empty trays and folded linens into a catering van. No one looked behind the stacked tablecloths. Lily climbed inside and pulled a dark blanket over herself. The doors closed. The van began moving. At first, she smiled. She felt the estate road beneath the tires, then the smoother highway. For the first time in her life, the gates opened, and no one brought her back. The drive lasted longer than she expected. When the van finally stopped, Lily slipped through the rear door. She was not at the festival. She stood beside a warehouse district near Fremont, where neon light reflected in rainwater and strangers moved quickly beneath umbrellas. No one knew her name. No one watched her. Lily stepped onto the sidewalk. For one bright moment, she felt free. Then pain closed around her chest. She stopped walking. Her heartbeat stumbled, raced, then seemed to strike the wrong rhythm. Lily reached for her phone. Someone brushed her shoulder while passing. The phone fell and cracked against the pavement. She bent to pick it up. The street tilted. Lily moved toward a narrow alley because it looked quieter. Her knees struck the ground first. The music box slipped from her pocket and opened beside her. 3 broken notes floated through the rain. At the same moment, Grace Holloway left the Desert Star Diner and hurried toward the final bus. She had $14 in her wallet, half a breakfast sandwich in her bag, and rain soaking through the cardboard inside her shoes. The bus stop waited at the end of the block. Then she heard a child whisper from the darkness. Across the city, Adrian entered Lily's empty bedroom. Her bed was untouched. The white coat was gone. The music box was gone. Adrian stood in the center of the room holding the stuffed rabbit she had left behind. Every guard in the estate stopped breathing. "Close the gates," he said. Jonah Reed appeared in the doorway. "Already done. Check every vehicle that left the property. We are pulling the records now." Adrian looked at the open inner door. She did not leave alone. Jonah did not answer. Then Adrian's phone began to ring. An unknown number glowed on the screen. He answered. "You have 5 seconds to tell me why you are using my daughter's phone." Grace looked down at the little girl lying against her knees. Rain collected on Lily's eyelashes. Her white coat had darkened with water and alley dirt. Each breath entered her chest in a shallow pull, paused, then escaped as a thin sound. Grace tightened her coat around the child. "I found her behind the Fremont wedding chapel," she said. "She can barely breathe." The voice on the phone changed. Not louder, more dangerous because it became quieter. "What does she look like? Blonde hair, gray eyes, white coat. She has a silver bracelet with a falcon." Something struck the floor on Adrian's end of the call. Grace heard men moving doors, opening commands passing through the background. "Is she conscious?" "Sometimes." "Put the phone beside her." Grace lowered the cracked phone. "Lily, sweetheart, your father is here." The girl's eyes moved beneath her lids. Daddy Adrian's breath broke once. "Little star, listen to me. I am coming to get you." Lily's fingers curled around Grace's sleeve. "I am sorry." "No," Adrian said. "You do not apologize. Stay awake." Her eyes closed again. Grace lifted the phone. "She needs an ambulance. My medical team is already moving. She may not have time for whatever argument you have with hospitals. Tell me your name." Grace stared toward the end of the street. The final bus had stopped beneath the shelter. Its doors stood open. Warm yellow light spilled onto the sidewalk. The driver glanced toward the alley. Grace could still run. She could leave the phone beside the child, wave down the bus, and disappear before Adrian Cross arrived. Then Lily whispered, "Please do not leave." Grace turned away from the bus. Grace Holloway. Adrian repeated the name as though committing it to memory. Grace Holloway, keep her warm. Raise her head slightly. Do not give her food or water. If she stops breathing, tell me immediately. I know how to keep someone alive. How I learned while bleeding on a diner floor. Silence answered her. Grace pressed 2 fingers against Lily's neck. The pulse fluttered uneven and fast. She is getting worse. I am 4 minutes away. The bus doors closed. Grace watched its lights move through the rain until they vanished beyond the intersection. She bent closer to Lily. Tell me about your father's pancakes. Lily's mouth trembled. They are bad. How bad? Hard in the middle. That sounds impossible. He says the stove is wrong. Grace glanced at the phone. I heard that Adrian said. Lily gave the faintest smile. Then the pavement began to vibrate. 3 black SUVs turned onto the street at a speed that made passing cars pull aside. Headlights swept across the alley walls. The first vehicle stopped only feet from Grace. Doors opened before the engines went silent. Men in dark coats stepped into the rain. Their movements were controlled and practiced. Some watched the rooftops. Others covered the street entrances. A broad-shouldered man with close-cropped hair approached Grace first. Keep your hands visible. Grace tightened her arms around Lily. She is not a weapon. No, he said. But the people who want her might be. The center vehicle opened. Adrian Cross stepped into the alley. Grace had seen his face in casino magazines, charity photographs, and newspaper articles that spoke carefully about his businesses. None of those images captured the force of his presence. He wore a black overcoat above a charcoal suit. Rain darkened his hair. A narrow scar crossed his right eyebrow. His face appeared calm until he saw Lily. Then it broke. The man feared across Las Vegas dropped to his knees in filthy water. Lily. Her eyes opened. Daddy. Adrian reached for her, but his hand stopped inches from her body. For 1 second he looked terrified that touching her might cause more harm. Grace shifted Lily carefully. Support her shoulders. Do not lay her flat. Adrian obeyed without argument. He gathered his daughter into his arms and pressed his cheek against her wet hair. I have you. Lily's hand rose weakly to his collar. I wanted the lights. I know. Do not be angry. I am not angry with you. His voice roughened. I am angry that you were alone. A medical vehicle pulled into the alley. 2 doctors hurried toward them, carrying equipment. One attached an oxygen mask. The other placed sensors against Lily's chest. Adrian refused to release her completely. He held her while they worked his face motionless except for the muscle tightening along his jaw. Grace stood slowly. Cold had entered her hands and feet so deeply that the movement made her dizzy. The broad-shouldered man noticed. He removed his coat and offered it to her. Grace did not take it. I am fine. You are blue. I am leaving. Adrian looked up. His eyes moved from Grace's soaked uniform to the coat wrapped around Lily. You gave her your coat. She was freezing. You missed your bus. Grace stared at him. How do you know that I saw it leave when we arrived? She is safe now. Adrian rose with Lily in his arms. No one is safe until I understand how she left my house. I found her. I did not take her. I know. Then I am going home. No. The word was quiet. It carried more authority than a shout. Grace stepped closer despite the armed men surrounding him. You do not get to give me orders. My daughter disappeared from an estate designed to prevent exactly that. You found her in an alley and called a number almost no one possesses. Until every fact is clear, you are coming with us. Grace's pulse began to climb. You think I hurt her? Adrian looked at Lily, who was gripping the front of his shirt. No. Then why am I being treated like a prisoner? His gaze returned to Grace. Because You are cold, exhausted, alone, and standing in a neighborhood where my enemies now know something happened. That sounds like your problem. It became yours the moment you recognized the Falcon. The broad-shouldered man opened the rear door of the SUV. Grace looked toward the empty street. No bus, no people watching from windows, no safe way home. Lily turned her face toward Grace. Come. The single word settled the argument more completely than Adrian's command. Grace climbed into the vehicle. The door closed behind her with a heavy sound. Adrian sat across from her with Lily in his arms. A doctor occupied the seat beside them, watching the portable monitor. The broad-shouldered man entered last. Jonah Adrian said, "Lock the estate. Separate every guard assigned to the West Wing. Pull footage from the service hall, the South Gate, and every vehicle that left after dinner." Jonah nodded. "What about the driver?" "Find him before anyone else does." Adrian looked down at Lily. Her eyes were closed again. The monitor released a sharp warning sound. The doctor adjusted the oxygen. "Her temperature is too low. We need to move faster." Adrian leaned toward the driver. The vehicle accelerated. Grace watched Las Vegas pass through rain-streaked windows. Neon signs dissolved into color. Traffic lights blurred. Cars moved aside before the convoy reached them. At one intersection, a police cruiser sat beneath a glowing billboard. The officer saw the vehicles. Then he lowered his eyes. Grace understood something she had only heard people whisper before. Adrian Cross did not move through the city unnoticed. The city noticed and chose silence. Lily stirred. "Grace." "I am here." Adrian looked across the child at her. Grace reached forward. Lily found her hand without opening her eyes. Adrian watched their fingers close. The hardness in his face changed into something Grace could not name. Not suspicion. Need, perhaps. That frightened her more. The convoy left the city center and climbed toward Summerlin. Casinos gave way to quiet roads, stone walls, and dark desert ridges. Red Rock Canyon rose in the distance beneath a storm-covered sky. The vehicles turned through iron gates marked with the silver falcon. Cameras followed them along a private road. The Cross estate appeared beyond a line of trees. It was not a house. It was a fortress designed to resemble one. Pale stone walls rose above the desert. Tall windows reflected the headlights. Balconies overlooked gardens arranged with perfect symmetry. Guards stood beneath covered entrances while more men moved along the edges of the property. The front doors opened before the vehicle stopped. An older man in a dark sweater beneath a white coat hurried down the steps. Adrian, Leonard. Dr. Leonard Shaw reached for Lily. Adrian held her tighter. The doctor stopped. "Give her to me." She lost consciousness. "I understand." Her rhythm changed twice. "I understand that too." Adrian did not move. Dr. Shaw lowered his voice. "You may frighten everyone else tomorrow. Tonight, give me the child." For a moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Adrian placed Lily onto the waiting stretcher. Medical staff surrounded her immediately. Oxygen, warming blankets, monitors, medication. Lily's hand slipped from Adrian's sleeve as the stretcher moved through the entrance. He followed. Dr. Shaw turned. "You wait outside the medical room." "No. If you enter looking like that, my nurses will be too frightened to work. They should be frightened if they fail." Grace felt the temperature in the hall change. Dr. Shaw did not. "Then frighten them after they save her." Adrian's eyes flashed. The doctor held his gaze. At last, Adrian stepped back. The medical team disappeared through a set of white doors. The entrance hall became silent. Rainwater fell from Adrian's coat onto the marble floor. Men waited for orders. He gave none. Without Lily in his arms, he looked like a man who had forgotten what to do with his hands. Jonah turned to Grace. "This way. I want to leave." "You can leave after Mr. Cross speaks with you. That does not sound voluntary." "It is not." Adrian looked at Jonah. "Do not speak to her like a suspect." Grace faced him. "I am not sure that improves the situation." Something moved behind Adrian's eyes, perhaps surprise that she was still willing to challenge him. He removed his coat and handed it to a guard. "May will get you dry clothes." "I do not need clothes." "You are shaking." "I am angry. You can be both." Grace hated that he was right. Jonah guided her through a wide corridor. The estate was warmer than any building Grace had entered in years. Light from crystal fixtures glowed across marble floors. Paintings lined the walls in carved frames. Some showed desert landscapes. Others showed stern men who looked as though they had never forgiven the world for disappointing them. Grace glanced down at herself. Wet hair clung to her cheeks. Her uniform was stained with alley water. Her damaged shoes left dark prints behind her. A woman in her 60s approached carrying a folded blanket. Her silver hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. She wore a simple black dress and moved with the quiet authority of someone who did not need permission. "I am May Whitaker. Grace." "I know." May wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. Grace almost stepped away. Then warmth touched her skin. Her resistance weakened. May led her into a sitting room where a fire burned beneath a stone mantel. She placed tea soup and dry socks on a table. "I cannot pay for this." May looked at her. "You brought Lily home alive. I found her. You stayed?" Grace lowered her eyes. May's voice softened. "Drink while it is hot." Grace sat. The soup smelled of chicken and herbs. Hunger twisted through her stomach, but she lifted the tea first because her hands needed the heat. Footsteps moved through the hall. Voices carried from beyond the open door. Adrian's voice had regained its control. "Separate the guard teams. No one leaves the property. Pull records from every catering company, maintenance crew, and delivery service that entered today." Jonah answered. "The South Gate log shows a catering van left at 11:16. Find it. The driver has already been contacted. Bring him here." A pause followed. Adrian spoke again. "No one touches him until I give the order." Grace stared into the tea. In her world, men threatened women over shifts and stole tips from waitresses. In Adrian's world, a sentence spoken quietly could decide whether someone returned home. She stood and crossed to the fireplace. A portrait hung above it. A blonde woman stood in a desert garden wearing a pale blue dress. One hand rested over the curve of pregnancy. Her gray eyes were soft but direct. A brass plate beneath the frame read, "Isabel Cross." Grace studied the woman's expression. There was warmth in it. Also, sorrow. She hated that portrait. Adrian's voice came from the doorway. Grace turned. He had removed his coat and rolled his sleeves to his forearms. Without the black layers, he appeared less like the man from magazine covers and more like someone who had not slept properly in years. "Why?" "She said the painter made her look obedient." Grace glanced back at the portrait. "She does not look obedient." No. Adrian entered the room. She rarely was. Grace moved away from the fireplace. How is Lily? Dr. Shaw is warming her and correcting the rhythm. Is she awake? No. Grace tightened the blanket around herself. I tried to keep her conscious. I know. She stopped responding twice. I know that too. The words carried no accusation. Only weight. Adrian looked toward the tea and untouched soup. You should eat. I want to go home. You will. When after you tell me exactly what happened. Grace sat because her legs had begun to ache. Adrian took the chair across from her. He did not lean back. Even in his own house, he sat like a man expecting danger to enter through the door. "Start when you left work." Grace told him about the diner, the rain, and the last bus. She described the sound in the alley and the white coat against the pavement. She told him about the cracked phone and the silver falcon. She described Lily's pulse, her blue lips, and the way the child apologized for wanting to see the lights. Adrian's face remained controlled until Grace mentioned the music box. "Where is it?" "One of your men picked it up." Adrian looked toward the portrait. It belonged to Isabel. Grace followed his gaze. "Lily said her mother chose her name." "She did. She also said your pancakes are terrible." Adrian's eyes returned to Grace. "She exaggerates. She said they are hard in the middle. The stove is unreliable." A laugh escaped Grace before she could stop it. The sound felt strange in the room. Adrian's mouth almost moved. Almost. Then he asked, "Why did you turn into the alley?" Grace looked at the fire. "I heard a child. Most people would have kept walking. Most people are afraid. You were afraid." "Yes, of what?" "The alley. The neighborhood. Your symbol. Missing the bus. Choosing wrong." Adrian studied her. "And yet you stayed." "She was more afraid than I was." He looked down at his hands. A faint scar crossed one knuckle. Another disappeared beneath his cuff. Grace said, "She did not run because someone took her." His head lifted. "She left because she wanted 1 hour outside. She does not understand the danger. She understands loneliness." The room became still. Adrian's voice cooled. "My daughter is alive because I protect her. She almost died because she escaped that protection." His eyes sharpened. Grace felt fear move through her. She refused to lower her gaze. "You think I should allow her to wander through crowds without guards?" "No." "Then what exactly are you accusing me of?" "I am not accusing you of loving her." Grace looked toward Isabel's portrait. "I am saying love can become a locked door when fear is holding the key." Jonah appeared in the doorway. His face gave nothing away, but his attention shifted carefully between them. Adrian remained silent for several seconds. Grace expected anger. Instead, exhaustion crossed his face. "Both things can be true," he said. Before Grace could respond, Dr. Shaw entered. Adrian stood immediately. The doctor's expression was serious, but not defeated. "She is stable." Air left Adrian's chest. It was not a dramatic movement, only a slight lowering of his shoulders. Grace saw it anyway. Dr. Shaw continued. "Her temperature is coming up. The rhythm has settled for now. She will sleep for several hours." "For now?" Adrian asked. Dr. Shaw looked toward Grace. "Is there somewhere private we can speak?" "She stays." Grace opened her mouth. Adrian spoke before she could. "She was with Lily during the episode. She may know something useful." Dr. Shaw accepted the decision. "The valve defect has progressed faster than expected. We planned surgery within 6 months. That timeline no longer exists." Adrian's face became unreadable. "How long?" 8 weeks if she remains stable. And if she does not?" "Less." The fire snapped behind them. Adrian looked at Jonah. "Contact Rachel Monroe. Dr. Shaw said she operates in Boston. Bring her here. She may refuse to operate outside her hospital. Then secure the hospital. Adrian, my daughter lives." Dr. Shaw stepped closer. "That is the goal. But this is not a territory you can conquer." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I am not asking for philosophy. No, you are asking for certainty." The doctor's voice softened. "I cannot give you that." For the first time, Grace saw something close to panic in Adrian's eyes. It appeared and vanished so quickly that anyone looking away would have missed it. Dr. Shaw continued. "I will speak with Dr. Monroe tonight. Lily needs rest, careful monitoring, and fewer shocks to her system. Adrian looked toward the medical wing. She will have them. Dr. Shaw gave him a tired look. Your house is full of armed men, locked doors, and people afraid to tell you the truth. Do not confuse silence with calm. He left before Adrian could answer. Grace expected Adrian to react. Instead, he stood staring at nothing. "Can I see her?" she asked. He turned. The question appeared to surprise him. "Why? She asked me not to leave. She was frightened. That does not make the promise less real." Adrian studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. The medical room was larger than Grace's apartment. Lily lay beneath white blankets with an oxygen tube beneath her nose. Machines glowed beside the bed. Her hair had been cleaned and brushed. Without rain and alley dirt, she looked smaller, younger. Grace stopped at the door. Adrian crossed to the bed and touched Lily's forehead with the back of his fingers. The gentleness of the movement did not belong to the stories people told about him. "She does not trust easily," he said. "Children know when adults are pretending. Do they usually?" Adrian looked at Lily. "Then she must have known you meant it when you said you would stay." Grace moved closer. "I meant until you arrived." Lily stirred. Her hand moved across the blanket. Grace reached for it before thinking. Lily's fingers closed around hers. Adrian watched. Something unguarded entered his expression. Grace looked down because seeing it felt too intimate. May brought her dry clothes and showed her to a guest room. The sweater and pants fit perfectly. That unsettled Grace more than if they had not. When she returned to the sitting room, Jonah stood beside Adrian holding a folder. Grace stopped in the doorway. Adrian gestured toward the chair. "Sit. I would rather stand." "Then stand." Jonah placed the folder on the table. Grace knew what it contained before Adrian opened it. Her life. Adrian looked at her. "I had you investigated." Heat rose through her face. "You did what my daughter's life touched yours. I needed to know who you were. You could have asked. You could have lied." Grace laughed once without humor. "So you opened every door instead." Adrian glanced at the first page. Grace Holloway, entered foster care at 13 after your mother died. Left the system at 18. No living family listed. 2 jobs, medical debt from a stabbing during a robbery, an eviction notice, a fraudulent loan connected to Evan Cole. "Stop." Adrian stopped. The quiet was worse than the facts. Grace looked at Jonah. "Did you enjoy reading it? No. That is supposed to help, no." Her eyes burned. She refused to blink. Adrian closed the folder. "Your account held $14.36 this morning." Grace's voice dropped. "People like me do not get privacy, do we?" Adrian considered her. "Not from men like me." The honesty struck harder than denial would have. Grace wrapped her arms around herself. "Is this the part where you decide I am desperate enough to control no? Then what is it?" Adrian stepped away from the table. Desperate people are expected to save themselves first. People with money love saying what desperate people do. You missed your last bus for a child whose name you did not know. I knew enough. You recognized my symbol before you called. Yes. You understood the risk. Yes. And you still gave her your coat. Grace looked toward the hallway. She was cold. Adrian's voice lowered. My guards watch gates. My doctors watch her heart. Her teachers watch her lessons. Not one person in this house saw that she was lonely enough to hide in a catering van. Grace said nothing. You saw her as a child before you saw my name. Anyone should have, but you did. He moved closer, keeping enough distance that she did not feel trapped. I want you to stay. Grace looked at him. No, you have not heard the offer. I heard the important part. $15,000 a month, medical insurance, a private room beside Lily's. training from Jonah, your debts refinanced under terms you can afford, protection from Evan Cole or anyone else who believes your past gives them a claim on you. The amount made Grace's pulse jump. $15,000. More than she earned in several months of standing until her feet went numb. Enough to keep an apartment. Enough to see a doctor without calculating which bill would go unpaid. Enough to breathe. That was what made the offer dangerous. What exactly would I be? Her companion. Her emergency guardian when I am absent. You learn her medical protocols. You tell me when she is frightened. You tell me when my protection becomes another prison. Grace glanced at Jonah. He does not like this, Jonah answered. I do not know you. That makes two of us. Adrian ignored them. You would not be part of my business. You would not be asked to carry messages, hide money, or lie to the police. Comforting. You would follow security rules. Rules written by you. Yes. And if I say no, you leave with compensation for tonight, and a driver takes you home. No men watching my apartment. Adrian paused. Grace noticed. No, he said at last. No threats. No. No mysterious accidents involving people who bother me. His expression did not change. No accidents. Grace looked down at the closed folder. If I stay, I want a legal contract. You will have one. My salary goes into an account you cannot touch. Yes. I choose my doctor. Yes. I can leave without permission. Adrian's eyes held hers. Yes. And no one investigates me again without telling me. Jonah looked at Adrian. Adrian said, within reason. Grace shook her head. That means no. A faint trace of frustration crossed his face. You negotiate aggressively for someone standing in my house at 3 a.m. I learned from men who thought exhaustion meant agreement. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Agreed. Grace had expected resistance. His acceptance unsettled her. I need time. Until morning. He turned to leave. At the doorway, he stopped. Whatever you decide, Lily is breathing because you chose not to walk away. Grace watched him disappear into the hall. She sat beside the dying fire long after Jonah left. The house quieted slowly. Footsteps faded. Doors closed. Guards changed positions beyond the windows. Grace thought about her apartment. The broken heater. The eviction notice. Brent's hand against the supply room door. Stan deducting stolen money from her tips. She thought about $15,000 and the danger attached to every cent. Most of all, she thought about Lily asking her not to leave. A soft sound came from the doorway. Grace looked up. Lily stood in the hall wearing pale pajamas. One hand held a stuffed rabbit. The other rested against her chest. May hovered behind her with a nurse. Grace stood. You should be in bed. I woke up. Are you hurting a little? The nurse stepped forward. We need to check her heart rate. Lily moved closer to Grace. If I go back, will you leave? Grace felt the question enter an old wound. She saw herself at 13 sitting on a stranger's sofa with her clothes in a plastic bag. A social worker had promised the placement might become permanent. It lasted 6 weeks. Another family promised they would not send her away because she was quiet. They kept her until summer ended. People had always promised Grace a future when they only meant the present. She knelt in front of Lily. I am here right now. Lily's eyes filled. That is not forever. No. Grace would not lie to her. But I will walk back with you. I will stay until you fall asleep. When you wake up, I will tell you the truth again. Lily studied her. Then she placed her small hand in Grace's. They walked to the bedroom together. Grace sat beside Lily while the nurse checked the monitor. Adrian stood in the shadow beyond the open door. Grace did not notice him. Lily did. She looked past Grace. "Daddy?" Adrian entered. Lily's fingers tightened around Grace's hand. She stayed. "I see that. Can she stay tomorrow?" Adrian looked at Grace. "It is her choice." Lily turned back. Grace saw hope gathering in the child's face and felt fear gathering inside her own. She brushed Lily's hair away from her forehead. "Go to sleep. That is not an answer. You are very demanding." "I learned from Daddy." Adrian almost smiled. Grace looked at him, then at Lily. "I will be here in the morning." Lily closed her eyes. Grace remained beside the bed until the child's breathing became slow and even. Morning entered the estate as pale gold light across the desert. Grace woke in a chair near Lily's bed with a blanket over her shoulders. She did not remember Adrian placing it there. Lily opened her eyes. "You stayed. I said I would. People say that? I know. But you did." Grace's throat tightened. A nurse entered with medication. Lily accepted it only while holding Grace's hand. By 10, Adrian waited in the corridor outside the room. He wore a dark suit again. Every line was controlled, but shadows remained beneath his eyes. Grace stepped into the hall and closed the door softly behind her. "She wants you here," Adrian said. "I know. And you." Grace looked through a tall window toward the desert. The estate walls cut across the land in pale stone. Beyond them, Las Vegas shimmered beneath the morning sun. Her old life still existed out there. Nothing about it had become easier overnight. She turned back to Adrian. "I will stay." His expression did not change much. Something in his eyes did. "The terms remain as stated. I have another one." "Of course you do." Grace almost smiled. "If I tell you that Lily needs something, you listen before you decide I am wrong." Adrian's gaze hardened slightly. "I will listen. That is not the same as agreeing." "No. It is a start." He nodded once. May approached carrying a folder. Inside was a formal contract with Grace's conditions written into it. Her salary belonged to her. Her medical care remained private. She could resign at any time. No surveillance would be placed inside her room. Any investigation into her personal life required written justification and disclosure. Grace read every page. Adrian waited without rushing her. At last, she signed her name. He signed beneath it. Neither of them offered a hand. The moment felt too serious for ceremony. Lily appeared in the doorway behind Grace, wrapped in a robe. "You are staying." Grace turned. "Yes." Lily smiled with her entire face. Adrian watched his daughter cross the corridor and wrap both arms around Grace. Grace held her carefully. Over Lily's shoulder, her eyes met Adrian's. For the first time since entering the estate, Grace did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like someone who had opened a dangerous door with her own hand and chosen to step through it. The morning after Grace signed the contract, Jonah Reed knocked on her door at 5:30. Grace opened it wearing borrowed sweatpants and a sweater May had left folded across the chair. Jonah stood in the corridor dressed in black training clothes. He held 2 cups of coffee. "One of those had better be for me." He handed her the weaker cup. "How did you know which one I wanted?" "You survived on diner coffee. Your standards are already damaged." Grace took a sip. It was still better than anything served at the Desert Star. "Where are we going?" "Downstairs." "For what?" "To discover. How quickly you regret signing that contract." The training room occupied part of the estate basement. It had padded floors, mirrored walls, locked cabinets, medical equipment, and a long row of paper targets. Radios, flashlights, emergency bags, and protective equipment were arranged across a metal table. A handgun rested at the far end, Grace stopped when she saw it. Jonah noticed. Have you ever held one? Number good. How is that good? You have fewer bad habits. Grace looked at the weapon. I am here to help Lily not shoot people. Jonah placed his coffee on the table. You are here because Lily may have 10 seconds between danger and safety. He walked to the center of the room. Stand here. Grace remained beside the table. What happens in 10 seconds? A door closes. A guard reaches the room. A car clears a gate. A child receives medicine. His expression stayed calm. 10 seconds is not much until someone needs you to buy it. Grace crossed the room. Jonah began with the way she stood. He corrected the position of her feet, the angle of her shoulders, and the placement of her hands. You keep your weight too far back. I have spent years moving away from people. That works until you cannot move. He showed her how to break a wrist grip. Grace failed the first time. She failed the second time. On the third attempt, she twisted too early and lost her balance. Jonah caught her before she struck the floor. Again. You enjoy this. I enjoy improvement. You have not seen any. I am an optimistic man. Grace looked at his expressionless face. No one has ever accused you of that. For nearly an hour, he taught her how to escape common holds and how to put Lily behind her without losing sight of the nearest exit. Grace's body remembered fear faster than it learned technique. Every time Jonah moved too quickly, her muscles tightened. Every time his hand came near her ribs, memory returned in flashes. A dark mask, a knife, coffee cups shattering against tile, blood spreading beneath her apron. Jonah saw the change in her breathing. He stepped back. Sit. I am fine. That answer is not useful in this room. Grace sat against the wall. Jonah crouched several feet away, leaving space between them. The robbery. She nodded. The scar came from a knife. Yes. Did anyone help you after the man left? Jonah waited. Grace looked toward the handgun on the table. Stan locked himself in the office. A customer crawled behind the counter and pressed towels against my side until the ambulance came. Were you conscious? Most of the time. What do you remember? Grace swallowed, knowing that the next 30 seconds belonged to someone else. Jonah sat back on his heels. That is why we train. Grace looked at him. To own the 30 seconds, to make one choice inside them. He stood and offered his hand. Grace took it. They returned to the center of the room. By the end of the session, she could break his grip twice out of 5 attempts. Jonah called that progress. Grace called it bruising with a purpose. The next morning, the handgun returned to the table. Jonah unloaded it and showed Grace every part before placing it in her hands. The metal felt heavier than she expected. Her fingers tightened around the grip. Loosen them, Jonah said. Fear makes people hold too hard. I thought fear made people drop things. It does both. Fear is creative. He taught her how to check the chamber, where to place her finger, and how to keep the weapon pointed away from anything she was not prepared to destroy. Grace lifted it toward the target. Her hands shook. Jonah stood beside her. Breathe. She pulled the trigger. The sound struck the room. Grace stepped backward. For 1 second, the basement vanished. She smelled burnt coffee and blood. Her scar burned. The gun lowered. Jonah did not touch her. He waited until she could see the room again. I cannot do this. You already did. I missed. The target did not matter. What did? You kept your eyes open. Grace looked at the paper figure. A small hole marked the wall beside it. She raised the weapon again. Her second shot hit the outside edge of the target. The days began to form a new rhythm. Grace trained before breakfast. Dr. Shaw taught her how to recognize changes in Lily's breathing and pulse. She learned the names of Lily's medications, the exact dosage for emergencies, and the signs that required immediate intervention. Jonah taught her how to use the estate radios and how to read the cameras without staring directly at them. He showed her the safest routes from Lily's bedroom, the art studio, the greenhouse, and the garden. He taught her to watch hands instead of faces. Faces lie because people train them, he said. Hands move before the lie is finished. Grace learned the guard rotations. Grant Keller usually managed the evening team near the West Wing. He was polite with Lily and careful around Adrian. He had served the Cross family for more than 7 years. Unlike Jonah, Grant smiled easily. "You are learning quickly," he told Grace one afternoon. "I have a patient teacher." Jonah, standing nearby, looked offended by the description. Grant laughed. "Give it another week." Afternoons belonged to Lily. The child recovered slowly from the night in the alley. She tired easily and sometimes stopped in the middle of a sentence to breathe. Grace never rushed her. When Lily wanted to read, Grace read. When she wanted quiet, Grace sat beside her without filling it. When Lily asked why her heart did not work like everyone else's, Grace did not offer a beautiful lie. "Some hearts need more help. Is mine weak? No." Lily studied her. "Then why does everyone call it fragile?" "Because adults confuse needing care with being weak." Lily thought about that. "Does your scar need care?" "Sometimes." "Does that make you fragile?" Grace smiled. "Ask Jonah. He has thrown me onto a mat 6 times this week." Lily's eyes widened. "Did you throw him back?" "Not yet. That means you need more training. You sound like your father." Lily made a face. Grace brought small changes into the estate without planning to. She allowed Lily to eat sandwiches on the greenhouse floor because the iron table felt too formal. She built a blanket fort beneath the dining room table after Lily admitted she had never made one. May provided sheets while pretending the idea offended her. The finished fort had 3 rooms, 2 entrances, and a sign written in Lily's careful handwriting. "No guards unless invited." Jonah read it and crossed his arms. "This violates every principle of secure architecture." Lily handed him a paper crown. "You can guard the door. There is no door. That is why we need you." He put on the crown. Adrian returned from a meeting and found Grace lying beneath the table while Lily arranged pillows around her. He stopped in the doorway. "What happened to the dining room?" "It improved." "Lily," said. Adrian looked at the hanging sheets. "This room was designed by an Italian architect." Grace lifted one corner of the fort. "Did he include a reading chamber? None. Then he lacked vision." Lily pointed toward the entrance. "Come inside." Adrian glanced at the guards standing behind him. Neither man looked directly at him. Grace bit the inside of her cheek. Adrian removed his jacket. He lowered himself to the floor and crawled beneath the table. His shoulder struck a chair. Lily laughed so hard that she had to stop and breathe. Adrian immediately reached for her. "I am fine," she said. He kept one hand near her back until her breathing settled. Then Lily placed a paper crown on his head. Grace looked at him. The black suit, the scar through his eyebrow, the gold paper slipping over one ear. "You look powerful." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "I can have you removed from this fort. You would have to crawl back out first." Lily covered her mouth to hide another laugh. Adrian looked at his daughter. The threat vanished from his face. He adjusted the crown. "Then I will remain." The art studio became Lily's favorite place to spend afternoons with Grace. It had belonged to Isabel. Sunlight entered through a glass ceiling and moved slowly across the wooden floor. Canvases leaned against the walls. Paintbrushes stood inside old cups. The room smelled of oil paint, lavender soap, and dust warmed by the desert sun. Lily's art teacher, Miriam Shaw, was Dr. Shaw's younger sister. She had silver hair, sharp brown eyes, and the habit of speaking only after everyone else had wasted their words. One afternoon, Lily pulled a cloth from a large canvas. I finished the wings. Grace stepped closer. The painting showed a small girl in a dark forest. Around her stood angels with black wings. Their feathers were streaked with gray and brown. Their faces looked tired, but their bodies formed a circle around the child. Grace studied them. Why are the wings black? Lily dipped a brush into a jar of water. Mommy said some angels go into terrible places. Miriam became still near the window. Lily continued. They walk through smoke and dirt. The bad things stain them. Does that make them bad? No. Lily pointed to the tallest angel. That one is Daddy. Grace looked toward the glass wall overlooking the western garden. Adrian stood below with Jonah and Grant. The three men spoke beside a fountain. Adrian's face was hard. Grant handed him a folder. Jonah watched the path behind them. Your father frightens people, Grace said. He does not frighten me. He frightens me sometimes. Lily considered this. He frightens himself, too. Grace looked at her. Lily had already returned to the painting. That evening, Grace found Adrian alone in his study. She had gone searching for May, but the open door and the low light drew her attention. Adrian stood beside a cabinet with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He had not drunk from it. You are lost, he said. Maybe. That means yes. Grace stepped inside. Dark wood covered the walls. Books filled tall shelves. Rain from a passing storm moved across the windows in silver lines. I saw Lily's painting. Adrian's hand became still. She does not show everyone. She paints angels with black wings. I know. She thinks one of them is you. His expression remained unreadable. That is kinder than what most people call me. Grace moved closer to the desk. She hears more than you think. His eyes sharpened. She is kept away from my business. She is kept away from names and details. That is the same thing. No. It means she feels fear without understanding where it comes from. Adrian placed the glass on the cabinet. Be careful, Grace. The warning entered the room softly. She felt it. She also remembered Lily painting darkness around a child because adults had given her no safer language for it. You hired me to protect her. Yes. That includes protecting more than her heartbeat. Adrian turned fully toward her. You believe I do not understand my own daughter. I believe you understand danger better than childhood. His jaw tightened. Grace continued before courage deserted her. She knows there are men outside these walls who hate you. She knows every adult in this house stops talking when she enters. She knows guards check windows before she sits beside them. She is alive. She is lonely. I will not apologize for keeping her alive. I'm not asking you to. Grace looked toward the window. I am asking you to notice when survival becomes the only life she is allowed to have. For several seconds only the rain spoke. Adrian picked up the whiskey glass. He studied the liquid without drinking. Isabel used to say I carried winter into every room. Your wife? He nodded. She was the only person who could say things like that without making me want to become crueler. Grace looked toward the portrait above the smaller fireplace. Lily said her mother told her about angels. Isabel believed beauty was a form of resistance. That sounds like something Lily would remember. She never heard Isabel say it. Grace looked at him. Adrian's fingers tightened around the glass. Isabel died after Lily was born. Her heart failed before I could bring her home. His voice remained controlled, but each word seemed to cost him something. I had doctors flown in. I offered money no hospital could spend in a lifetime. Men who had not prayed since childhood stood in the hallway and begged God for a woman they barely knew. He looked at Grace. Nothing mattered. Grace understood the walls then, not only the stone ones. So you built protection. Yes, you built grief out of stone and put Lily inside it. Adrian's eyes flashed. Grace's pulse jumped, but she did not move. You speak freely for someone who was afraid of me 4 days ago. I am still afraid of you. And yet you keep standing in my study. Because Lily does not need every person in this house to fear you more than they love her. Adrian looked away first. Grace had not expected that. His gaze settled on the rain beyond the windows. What are you asking me to do? Let her make small choices. She is 8. She is 8, not invisible. What choices? Where she eats. What she wears. Who stands close enough to hear every word she says. Let her meet children who do not work for you. Adrian's expression hardened again. No. Grace folded her arms. You asked. I listened. You are proving my point. I will not place strangers near her. Then choose them carefully. You seem good at investigating people. The words carried enough edge to remind him of the file he had opened on her. Adrian noticed. Is that anger going to disappear? No. Good. Grace blinked. He picked up the glass and poured the whiskey back into the bottle. I will speak with Jonah. The following afternoon, Lily ate lunch in the greenhouse. Adrian sat across from her at a small iron table that had belonged to Isabel. He looked uncomfortable among tomato vines and hanging herbs. Grace sat beside Lily. 2 guards stood near the doors instead of directly behind Adrian's chair. Lily placed a napkin across his lap. You look like a statue invited to tea. Adrian glanced at Grace. Did you teach her that I do not have that kind of talent? Lily moved 3 peas into a straight line. Can we eat here tomorrow? Adrian looked around the greenhouse. Yes. And the next day, we will discuss it. That means maybe. It means discuss. Grace reached for the bread. It means he wants time to pretend the idea was his. Adrian's mouth moved slightly. Lily saw it. You almost smiled. No, you did. You are mistaken. Grace saw it. Adrian looked at her. Grace tore the bread in half. I saw nothing. I value my employment. A few days later, 2 children arrived for an art lesson. They were the son and daughter of a surgeon Dr. Shaw trusted. Jonah had investigated their parents' grandparents' driver's school and dentist. Grace suspected he had also investigated the family dog. Lily stood inside the studio before they arrived, clutching a paintbrush. What do I say? Hello usually works. What if they ask why there are guards? Tell them your father worries. What if they ask what he does? Tell them he works too much. Lily frowned. That is true. The children entered with Miriam. The girl, Sophie, was 9 and wore purple glasses. Her brother Caleb was 7 and immediately asked whether the estate had secret tunnels. Lily looked at Grace. Grace shrugged. Every interesting house has one. The first 15 minutes were stiff. Lily spoke as though answering a teacher. Sophie arranged her brushes by size. Caleb painted a green horse and insisted it was anatomically accurate. Then Grace dropped a small streak of blue paint onto the floor. Sophie gasped. Lily froze. Grace looked down. That is unfortunate. Caleb dipped his brush into red paint and marked the paper in front of Grace. That is worse, she said. Lily's smile appeared slowly. She touched yellow paint to Grace's wrist. Within minutes, the art lesson became chaos. Adrian entered when a brush struck the front of his black shirt. The room stopped. A bright blue mark spread across the fabric. Caleb lowered his hand. Lily looked terrified. Adrian stared at the stain. Grace prepared to speak. Adrian dipped 2 fingers into a jar of blue paint. He touched Lily's nose. She gasped. Then she laughed. Sophie painted Caleb's cheek. Miriam sat by the window and watched the room dissolve into color. Grace looked at Adrian. His eyes met hers across the studio. For a brief second, the guarded house felt ordinary. Adrian began noticing when Grace skipped meals. A plate appeared in the training room after she claimed she was not hungry. A jar of ointment waited outside her bedroom when Jonah bruised her wrist during practice. When Dr. Shaw learned the scar near her rib still caused pain, he recommended a specialist. Grace found the appointment card on her desk. She carried it into Adrian's study. "You made a medical appointment for me. I asked May to arrange one." "That is the same thing. You said you wanted to choose your doctor. There are 3 names in the folder. You should have asked before arranging anything." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "You are in pain. That does not make my body one of your problems." His expression changed. Grace placed the folder on the desk. "You pay me. I live in your house. Your men protect me. Every kindness from you can become an order before I understand what happened." Adrian was silent. Grace regretted the sharpness, but not the truth. "I am trying to help," he said. "I know. Then what do you want choice before comfort?" The next morning, May brought Grace a new folder. Her insurance had been transferred to an independent policy. The medical appointment had been canceled. 3 specialists were listed with their credentials and contact information. Her salary was deposited into an account only she could access. Her debts had been refinanced through a legitimate bank not secretly erased. Grace found Adrian in the western corridor. "You changed everything. You asked for choice. I did not expect you to listen so quickly. I am learning the paperwork." Grace almost laughed. "Thank you." He nodded. She started to walk away. "Grace," she turned. "Choose a doctor." "I will. Soon." That sounded like an order. It was a strongly expressed concern. "You are still learning." "So I have been told." In a private casino suite near the Strip, Victor Sloan studied photographs spread across a table. Adrian walking beside Lily in the garden. Grace holding Lily's hand outside Dr. Shaw's office. The 3 of them eating inside the greenhouse. Victor wore a gray suit and a pale blue tie. His hair had silvered at the temples, but his face remained smooth and controlled. Grant Keller stood near the window. "Cross is changing routines," Victor said. "Small ones. There are no small changes in a house built on repetition." Grant looked at the photographs. "The waitress is influencing him." Victor smiled. "Adrian once made men disappear because they spoke his wife's name carelessly. Now he asks a stranger whether his daughter feels lonely. He is still dangerous." "Of course." Victor lifted the photograph of Grace. "That is why weakness is useful only when it has a face." Grant's expression tightened. "I did not agree to harm the child. No one wants to harm her. You want control of the casinos. I want Adrian to remember the man he was before grief made him sentimental." Victor placed the photograph down. "Give me the gate schedule." Grant did not move. Victor looked at him. "You came to me because Adrian no longer listens to the men who built his empire. He listens to Jonah. He listens to Grace." Grant looked toward the city lights. After several seconds, he placed a folded page on the table. Grace did not see Evan Cole until he spoke her name. She had just left a physical therapy consultation near Charleston Boulevard. Jonah waited in a car across the street, giving her the privacy she had demanded. Grace. Her body recognized the voice before her mind accepted it. Evan stood beneath the awning of a closed pharmacy. He looked thinner than he had 3 years earlier. His brown hair was longer. His jacket was expensive once, but the cuffs had frayed. Grace stopped. "You need to leave. I only want 5 minutes." You used all of them 3 years ago. I made mistakes. You stole money. I was scared. You left me with the debt. I know. Grace turned toward the street. Evan stepped closer. Victor Sloan knows where you live now. She stopped. He knows about the Cross estate. He knows you are close to the girl. Grace faced him slowly. How Evan's eyes moved away. The answer became clear. You told him, I owe people money. You always owe someone. He said no one would be hurt. What does he want? Evan swallowed. The East Service Gate. 90 seconds. You open it during the evening rotation. Grace stared at him. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the awning. You sold my name once. Now you are trying to sell a child. It is not like that. It is exactly like that. He will erase the loan. The loan you created. He can clear your name too. Grace stepped closer until Evan had to look at her. Tell Victor Sloan the waitress said no. She crossed the street. Jonah opened the car door before she reached it. He saw her face. What happened? Take me to Adrian. Adrian listened without interrupting. Jonah stood near the study door. 2 guards waited in the hall. When Grace finished, Adrian's face had become completely still. Where is Evan now? Near the clinic. Adrian looked at Jonah. Bring him. Grace understood the order. No. Adrian turned toward her. No. You are not killing him. He threatened Lily. He carried a message. He chose to carry it. Yes. Then give the recording from the clinic cameras to the police. Adrian's voice lowered. Move away from the door. Grace realized she had stepped between him and Jonah. She remained where she was. If you kill Evan, Lily will know. She never needs to know. She always knows. Adrian's eyes hardened. He tried to help men enter my home, and now you have evidence. Evidence does not protect my daughter. Neither does a body buried in the desert. The room became silent. Jonah watched Adrian carefully. Grace continued. You keep asking me to believe there is a man beneath everything people say about you. Give me a reason. Adrian came closer. You believe mercy changes men like Evan No. Then why should he receive it? Because this is not about what he deserves. What is it about who you decide to become while Lily is watching? Adrian looked past Grace toward Isabel's portrait. The anger in his face remained. It simply lost control of his hands. He turned to Jonah. Bring Evan to the Federal Organized Crime Unit. Give them the recording, the financial records, and every message connected to Sloan. Jonah nodded. Alive. Adrian looked at Grace. Alive. Jonah left. Grace released a breath. Adrian walked toward the window. You asked me to trust a system that has ignored men like Victor for years. I asked you not to become him. That is not the same thing. No. Grace stood beside the desk. It is harder. Adrian looked at her reflection in the glass. Yes. That evening, Grace found him on the balcony outside the library. The desert wind moved across the estate. Las Vegas burned in the distance, gold and white against the dark valley. Adrian rested both hands on the stone railing. You were right, he said. Grace joined him. About what sparing Evan was more difficult than killing him. Difficult does not mean wrong. It often means dangerous. So does love. Adrian looked at her. The distance between them felt suddenly smaller. You make me question instincts that kept me alive. Maybe they kept you alive longer than they kept you human. He should have been offended. Instead, the corner of his mouth lifted. You have a remarkable talent for insulting people in their own homes. I learned in customer service. Adrian's gaze dropped briefly to her mouth. Grace felt the change in the air. She could have stepped back. She did not. He raised one hand slowly, giving her enough time to refuse. His fingers touched the side of her face. Grace's breath caught. "Tell me to stop," he said. She looked into the gray eyes Lily had inherited. No. Adrian kissed her. There was nothing careless in it. He moved as though restraint had become the only thing keeping the moment from consuming them both. Grace touched the front of his shirt. For one breath she forgot the estate, the guards, the contract, and every reason this was unwise. Then she stepped back. Adrian's hand fell from her face. "I will not become another thing you own." His expression changed, not with anger, with understanding. He rested his forehead against hers. "Then stay only where you choose." Grace closed her eyes. The city continued glowing below them. Inside the house, Lily's laughter drifted from the library where May was losing a card game with great dignity. Grace opened her eyes again. "I choose this moment." Adrian looked at her. For now. For now. He nodded as though she had offered something far greater than a promise. Together they returned inside. Neither Grace nor Adrian spoke about the kiss. The silence between them was not awkward. It was alive, warm, and dangerous. Lily sat on the library rug with May surrounded by playing cards. She looked up the moment they entered and studied their faces with the solemn attention of a detective. "You were gone a long time." Adrian removed his jacket. "We were talking." Lily looked at Grace. "Did he listen, eventually?" Adrian glanced at her. Lily smiled and returned to the cards. Grace sat beside her, but she remained aware of Adrian across the room. Every time she lifted her eyes, she found him already looking at her. For one evening, the estate felt peaceful. That peace lasted 4 days. On the 5th morning, Lily painted the wolf. The art studio was filled with pale winter light. Miriam sorted brushes near the windows while Grace sat behind Lily, dividing the child's blonde hair into 3 loose sections. Lily had been quiet since breakfast. Not frightened, focused. Her brush moved across the canvas in careful strokes. The painting showed a snow-covered forest beneath a gray sky. In the center stood 3 figures. A little girl with silver wings, a woman with pale wings marked by thin scars, a tall man with black wings spread wide enough to protect them both. Grace studied the woman. "Is that supposed to be me?" Lily did not turn. "You have green eyes. The wings are generous. They are not finished." Grace tied the end of the braid. "What is missing?" Lily dipped her brush into a dark blue color. "The wolf." Miriam's hand paused over a jar. Grace watched Lily paint a shape at the edge of the trees. At first it was only shadow. Then came narrow legs, a long body, and a face partly hidden behind branches. Lily added 2 bright blue eyes. Grace felt something cold move through her. "Have you seen that wolf before in my dreams? What does he do?" "He waits outside." "Outside? Where the house?" Miriam turned from the window. Lily painted the wolf's mouth into a thin smile. "He does not come in because Daddy watches him." Grace kept her voice gentle. "Then why are you afraid Lily's brush stopped? He knows a door." The air changed behind Grace. Adrian stood in the studio entrance. Jonah and Grant were several steps behind him. Adrian looked at the painting, his gaze fixed on the wolf. "Little star," he said, "tell me exactly what you dreamed." Lily glanced over her shoulder. "The wolf watches the windows." "Which windows, I do not know. Did someone tell you this story?" "No." "Did you see anyone near the house?" Lily shook her head. Grant stepped into the room. Children build images from conversations they overhear. Lily looked at him. The brush lowered in her hand. Grace noticed the movement, not fear, recognition. Jonah noticed it too. Adrian approached the canvas. Why are the wolf's eyes blue? Lily studied the painting as though the answer might be inside it. Because he smiles like someone I know. Grant laughed softly. Half the men in this house have blue eyes. Jonah looked at him. Grant's smile faded. Adrian turned toward the guards. Full security review. Every access point, every shift record, every device connected to the estate network. Grant nodded immediately. I will begin with the west wing. Jonah said I will take the service corridors. No, Adrian replied. You lead the review. Grant's jaw tightened for less than a second. Grace saw it. Jonah had trained her to watch hands, but faces still betrayed people when pride was struck. Adrian looked at Lily. You are safe. She stared at the wolf. I know. The answer did not sound certain. For 2 days, security teams moved through the estate. They tested alarms, locks, cameras, radios, and underground power lines. Every employee was questioned. Delivery records were checked. Vehicles were searched. Nothing appeared wrong. No missing footage. No broken seals. No unfamiliar devices. Grant reported that the estate was secure. Jonah did not agree. You think he missed something? Grace asked. They stood in the training room after her morning session. Jonah closed a medical bag and placed it on the table. I think security reviews often find what the person leading them expects to find. That sounds like another way of saying yes. It is. Grace wiped sweat from her forehead. Do you suspect Grant? I suspect everyone, even Adrian. Especially Adrian. Powerful men are often blind to the damage caused by their own certainty. Grace looked at him. You have known him a long time, 20 years. Do you trust him with my life? That was not the question. Jonah's gaze moved toward the target wall. No. Grace waited. He added, Trust is not one decision. It is a practice. And Jonah considered the question. Grant trusts the man Adrian used to be. What does that mean? It means he respected fear more than loyalty. Grace remembered Lily's wolf. He did not like Adrian letting Evan live. No. Did he say that he did not need to? Jonah handed Grace the emergency bag. Carry this whenever Lily leaves her room. You think something is coming. I think nothing stays quiet this long without effort. The words followed Grace through the next several days. Still, life inside the estate began to soften again. Lily resumed painting. Adrian allowed the 2 children from the art lesson to return. May arranged music in the greenhouse. Grace continued training. Adrian spent more time at home, though meetings still pulled him into locked rooms late at night. He and Grace did not kiss again. They did not need to. The memory had changed the space between them. He began waiting for her at breakfast without admitting it. She began noticing when his coffee went cold. One evening, Lily demanded pancakes. Adrian stood at the kitchen counter in a white shirt with his sleeves rolled above his forearms. Grace leaned against the island while Lily watched from a chair. The first pancake burned. The second remained raw in the center. The third tore apart when Adrian tried to turn it. Lily looked at Grace. He is getting worse. Grace examined the pan. That may be his only natural talent. Adrian placed the broken pancake on a plate. The heat is uneven. The stove cost more than my old apartment building. Price does not guarantee competence. Grace smiled. Is that how you explain your mistakes? I do not make mistakes. Lily pointed to the plate. That one is shaped like Nevada. Adrian looked down. It is intentional. Grace laughed. The sound filled the kitchen. Adrian looked at Lily, then at Grace. Something in his expression became quiet. For one moment he saw life he had never allowed himself to imagine. No guards speaking into radios, no blood on his cuffs, no men waiting for permission to be afraid. Only flour on the counter, his daughter laughing, and a woman who had entered his world without asking him to become less dangerous before seeing whether he could become more human. The lights went out. The kitchen fell into darkness. The hum of the refrigerators stopped. The security lights did not activate. Grace's laughter died. Adrian was already moving. "Lily, stay still." A faint red light blinked on Grace's radio. Then Jonah's voice broke through the static. "Internal breach. West corridor. Take Lily to shelter." Adrian reached beneath the counter and pulled a handgun from a hidden compartment. Grace moved toward Lily. "Come with me." Lily climbed from the chair. Adrian caught Grace's arm. Their eyes met in the darkness. "Do not look for me. I know. Do not wait. I know." He released her. Grace took Lily's hand and ran. The corridor outside the kitchen was almost black. Emergency strips along the floor flickered weakly, then died. Somewhere in the western wing, glass shattered. A gunshot followed. Lily stumbled. Grace caught her. "Keep moving. Where is Daddy? He knows where to go." Another burst of gunfire struck the house. The sound rolled through the walls. Grace felt Lily's hand tighten around hers. They reached the main staircase. A guard lay near the lower landing. Grace stopped. His radio was gone. Blood spread beneath his shoulder. Lily made a small sound. Grace stepped in front of her. "Look at me." Lily obeyed. "Do not look down." They moved past the guard. Grace pressed the radio at her collar. "Jonah, I have Lily. We are moving to the safe room." Static answered. Then a broken voice. "Use the north route." Grace turned toward the north corridor. Footsteps approached from the shadows. A man appeared near the marble columns. Grant Keller. He held a gun low beside his leg. Relief crossed Lily's face. "Grant." He moved toward them. Jonah changed the evacuation point. "Come with me." Grace did not move. "Where garage level?" "The safe room route is compromised." Grant's voice was calm. Too calm. Grace remembered every lesson Jonah had repeated. "Watch the hands." Grant's left hand held the gun. His right hand was near his jacket. He carried no radio. There was blood on his cuff, but no visible wound. Grace stepped slightly in front of Lily. "Show me your radio." Grant stopped. What Jonah changed the evacuation point. "Show me the order." "There is no time." Then say the security phrase. Grant's expression did not change. Lily whispered, "Grace." Grant looked at the child. "It is all right, Lily. Come here." Grace placed her hand on the weapon beneath her sweater. "Say the phrase." Grant smiled. The smile was small, familiar. Lily's breath caught. "The wolf," she whispered. Grant drew his gun. Grace pushed Lily behind the stone column. The first shot struck the wall where Lily's head had been. Marble exploded into white dust. Grace fired once. The recoil drove through her arms. Her shot missed Grant and struck the wooden frame beside him. He moved behind another column. Grace pressed the hidden panel near the wall. Nothing happened. No power. She hit it again. A weak mechanical sound began inside the wall. The steel safe room door started to open slowly. Grace grabbed Lily. Inside. Grant fired again. The bullet shattered a framed painting above them. Lily froze. Grace pulled her forward. The safe room door reached halfway. A second attacker appeared at the end of the corridor. Grace fired twice. One shot hit the floor. The other struck the man's leg. He fell with a shout. Grant moved from behind the column. Grace pushed Lily through the doorway. The child stumbled onto the concrete floor. Grace reached for the interior control. Grant's bullet hit her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. The force turned her sideways. For a second, she saw only white light. Her knees struck the floor. Lily screamed. Grace looked down at her arm. Blood spread across her sweater. The safe room door had begun closing, slowly, far too slowly. Grant crossed the corridor toward them. Grace heard Jonah's voice in her memory. 10 seconds is not much until someone needs you to buy it. She forced herself upright. 10 seconds. Grant raised his weapon. Grace grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall and released it into his face. White powder filled the corridor. Grant cursed and fired blindly. 9 seconds. Grace pushed Lily farther into the room. Get behind the bed. Lily shook her head. Grace, move. 8 seconds. Grant came through the powder. Grace swung the extinguisher into his wrist. The gun fell. 7 seconds. He struck Grace across the face. She hit the wall. Her injured shoulder burned so fiercely that the corridor tilted. 6 seconds. Grant reached for Lily. Grace caught the back of his coat and pulled. He turned and drove his elbow into her ribs. The old scar tore with pain. 5 seconds. Grace fell. Grant stepped over her. Lily backed toward the closing door. 4 seconds. Grace grabbed Grant's ankle. He kicked her hand away. 3 seconds. She rose on one knee and drove the extinguisher into the back of his leg. Grant collapsed. 2 seconds. Grace seized Lily around the waist and threw both of them through the narrowing doorway. Grant lunged after them. 1 second. His hand entered the gap. Grace kicked his wrist. The steel door closed. A scream came from the other side. The lock engaged. Silence filled the safe room. Grace lay on the floor. Lily crawled toward her. Blood had reached Grace's fingertips. You bought the seconds, Lily whispered. Grace tried to answer. No sound came at first. She forced air into her lungs. I told you I would stay. A gunshot struck the outer door. The steel held. Another shot followed. Lily pressed both hands over her ears. Grace dragged herself toward the medical cabinet. Her left arm barely moved. Her right hand shook. She reached for the radio. Jonah. Only static. Jonah, we are inside. A faint voice answered. Grace, we are in the safe room. Grant is the traitor. More gunfire drowned the response. Grace looked at Lily. The child stood near the narrow bed with one hand pressed to her chest. Her face had changed. The color was leaving it. Lily, I cannot breathe. Grace's fear became cold. She crawled toward her. Sit down. Lily did not move. Her knees folded. Grace caught her with one arm and lowered her to the floor. The child's pulse raced beneath Grace's fingers. Too fast, uneven, then slower. Grace opened the emergency bag. Medication, oxygen, monitor. Her bloody hand slipped against the plastic case. She forced it open. Look at me, Lily. The child's gray eyes were wide. Is Daddy coming? Yes. Are you sure Grace fitted the oxygen mask over her face? Yes. The lie did not feel cruel. It felt necessary. Grace pressed the radio. Jonah. She is having an episode. Static. Her rhythm is unstable. I need Dr. Shaw. A different voice answered. Dr. Shaw. Grace, listen carefully. Attach the monitor. She followed his instructions. The machine flickered to life on emergency power. A broken rhythm appeared across the screen. Dr. Shaw's voice changed. Give her the emergency dose. Grace found the injector. Her injured hand could not hold it steady. She trapped it between both palms. Lily watched her. Does it hurt? For a second. Are angels scared? Grace pressed the injector against Lily's thigh. Yes. Then how do they fight? Grace activated the dose. They fight scared. Lily's eyes closed. No. Stay with me. Grace touched her cheek. Tell me about the festival. Lily opened her eyes again. I wanted hot chocolate. What kind? The kind in paper cups. What else? Bubbles. Good. What color? All colors. A heavy impact struck the safe room door. Grant or another attacker was trying to force the mechanism. Grace looked at the red emergency button. She hit it. An alarm should have sounded. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. The room remained silent. Dr. Shaw's voice broke through the radio. Grace, her rhythm is getting worse. I know. You need to keep her calm. Gunfire continued outside. Grace looked at Lily. The child was staring at the door. Grace moved her body between Lily and the sound. Look at me. Lily did. Do you remember the blanket fort? Yes. This room is another fort. It does not have a paper crown. We will make one later. Daddy does not fit in forts. He crawled into the first one. Lily's mouth moved weakly. He hit the chair. He did. The monitor released a warning tone. Dr. Shaw said Grace help is almost there. How long? A pause. 3 minutes. Grace looked at Lily's pulse reading. She does not have 3 minutes. Beyond the door, gunfire erupted again. Then came a different sound. A man shouting. A body striking the wall. Another shot. Silence. The outer lock shifted. Grace grabbed her gun with her uninjured hand. The safe room door began to open. She positioned herself in front of Lily. Adrian appeared in the gap. Blood marked his white shirt and one side of his face. None of it seemed to be his. Jonah stood behind him with his weapon raised. Adrian saw Grace, then Lily. His face changed. He crossed the room and dropped beside his daughter. What happened? Her heart, Grace said. The attack triggered it. Adrian gathered Lily against him. Her eyes opened. Daddy, I am here. Grace got hurt. Adrian looked at the blood covering Grace's shoulder. Jonah knelt beside her. Can you stand? No. You are going to anyway. He lifted her carefully. Pain tore through her. Adrian carried Lily from the safe room. Grant lay against the opposite wall with a gunshot wound in his leg. His face was coated in white powder. 2 guards held weapons on him. Grant looked up at Adrian. Victor was right. Adrian stopped. You built this city because men feared you. Then you let a child and a waitress teach you mercy. Adrian handed Lily to Dr. Shaw, who had reached the corridor with a medical team. Then he turned toward Grant. The house became silent. Adrian drew his gun. Grant smiled through the blood on his mouth. There he is. Adrian raised the weapon. Grace saw the man Las Vegas feared return to his face. Cold, certain, ready. Then Lily's monitor began screaming. Adrian looked toward his daughter. Dr. Shaw was placing her onto a stretcher. Her pressure is dropping. Adrian lowered the gun. My daughter comes first. He looked at Jonah. Keep Grant alive. Grant's smile disappeared. Adrian followed the stretcher. Grace leaned against Jonah as they moved through the damaged corridor. Broken glass covered the floor. Smoke drifted near the ceiling. Guards carried wounded men toward the entrance. One attacker lay unmoving beside the staircase. The estate no longer looked like a palace. It looked like the battlefield it had always been designed to survive. Outside, medical vehicles waited with their doors open. Adrian climbed into the first ambulance with Lily. Dr. Shaw began working beside her. Grace tried to follow. Jonah caught her. You need another vehicle. I am going with her. You are bleeding through your clothes. So is she. Jonah looked at Grace's face. Then he helped her into the second ambulance. The drive to the hospital passed in fragments. White lights. A medic cutting the sweater from Grace's shoulder. The taste of blood in her mouth. Jonah speaking into a phone. Adrian's ambulance visible through the rear windows. At the hospital, a surgical team waited behind sealed doors. Dr. Rachel Monroe arrived wearing blue scrubs beneath a winter coat. She was smaller than Grace expected, with dark hair streaked by gray and eyes that moved quickly without appearing rushed. She examined Lily's monitor. "We cannot wait." Adrian stood beside the bed. "You said the surgery needed preparation." "It did. And now waiting is more dangerous than operating." Adrian looked at Lily. Her face was pale beneath the oxygen mask. Dr. Monroe continued. "The attack placed severe stress on her heart. The valve is failing. We operate now, or we may lose the opportunity." Adrian reached for the consent form. The pen did not move. Grace watched his hand tremble. He stared at the signature line. A man who signed contracts worth millions without reading twice could not write his name beneath the words that allowed strangers to stop his daughter's heart and try to repair it. Grace stepped beside him. "Adrian." He looked at her. "She needs you to sign." His jaw tightened. "What if I give permission for the thing that kills her? What if you refuse the thing that saves her?" The question entered him slowly. He signed. The nurse began moving Lily toward the operating room. Lily lifted one hand weakly. "Grace." Grace approached the bed. "I am here." Lily found her fingers. Then she reached for Adrian. He took her other hand. Lily looked from one to the other. "Do not let go while I am sleeping." Grace placed her hand inside Adrian's. His fingers closed around hers. "We will be here," he said. The doors opened. The bed moved forward. Adrian walked beside it until a nurse stopped him at the marked line on the floor. Lily disappeared behind the doors. Adrian remained standing with his hand still around Grace's. Only after the doors closed did he seem to notice. He did not release her. A doctor led Grace toward a treatment room to clean the gunshot wound. The bullet had passed through the upper part of her shoulder without striking bone. She received stitches, antibiotics, and a sling. When she returned to the waiting area, Adrian stood at the windows. Jonah approached from the hallway. His expression told Grace the news before he spoke. "Grant is conscious." Adrian turned. "He gave us Victor's location, private airfield north of the city. Victor plans to leave before sunrise." Adrian's face emptied of emotion. "How many men? 8 confirmed. Possibly more." Jonah held out a set of keys. "We can reach him in 20 minutes. Grace looked at Adrian. She saw the decision enter his body. His shoulders settled. His breathing slowed. The man who had built an empire from fear stepped forward. Then he looked at the operating room doors. Behind them, machines were keeping Lily alive. Grace said nothing. She did not ask him to stay. The choice could not belong to her. Jonah waited. "You may not get another chance," he said. Adrian looked at the keys. He remembered another hospital corridor, another set of closed doors. Isabel dying while he demanded names, answers, and someone to punish. He had spent years believing violence was the only language the world respected. Victor had built his entire plan around that belief. Adrian closed Jonah's fingers around the keys. "You handle Victor." Jonah studied him. "He expects you, then disappoint him." "You trust me to finish this?" Adrian looked toward the surgical doors. "I trust you to protect what remains outside this room." Jonah nodded. He turned and walked away. Adrian sat beside Grace. It was the first time she had seen him choose stillness while an enemy remained alive. "You could lose Victor," she said. "I already lost years to men who wanted me angry." His gaze remained fixed on the doors. "I will not lose her because one of them succeeded." Grace placed her uninjured hand over his. Minutes passed, then an hour. A nurse entered and left without speaking to them. The clock above the doors moved with quiet cruelty. Adrian did not release Grace's hand. At 3:17 in the morning, an alarm sounded inside the operating room. People began running. A nurse pushed through the doors carrying blood. Another called for a cardiac cart. Adrian stood. Grace rose with him. The surgical doors remained closed. Behind them, Lily's heart stopped. Behind the operating room doors, Lily's heart stopped. The alarm cut through the corridor like metal tearing in half. Adrian took one step toward the doors. A nurse blocked his path. "You cannot go in. That is my daughter." "I know. Then move." Grace caught his wrist with her uninjured hand. "Adrian." His eyes turned toward her, but he did not seem to see her. Inside the operating room, voices rose over the alarm. Someone called for medication. Another voice counted compressions. Adrian pulled against Grace's grip. "They need room to work. They need me." "No. You need her." The words reached him. He stopped moving. Grace tightened her hand around his. "Stay here." Adrian stared at the closed doors. His breathing had become shallow. The man who could silence a casino floor by entering it now stood powerless beneath hospital lights. Grace understood that kind of helplessness. She had known it on the diner floor with blood beneath her body. She had known it in the alley while Lily struggled to breathe. Helplessness was not the absence of love. Sometimes it was love with nowhere to go. "Look at me," Grace said. Adrian did. "Breathe." He drew in air. Again. His chest rose. The alarm continued. Grace kept counting his breaths until the sounds behind the doors changed. The frantic voices lowered. The alarm stopped. Silence followed. It lasted only seconds, but it felt long enough to contain a lifetime. Dr. Rachel Monroe appeared behind the glass. Her surgical mask hung beneath her chin. Sweat darkened the hair near her temples. Adrian moved toward her. What happened? Her heart went into arrest. Grace felt his hand close around hers. Dr. Monroe continued before fear could finish its work. We restored the rhythm after 43 seconds. Adrian's face remained still. "Is she alive?" "Yes." The word left the doctor softly. "She is alive." Grace released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Adrian closed his eyes. One tear moved down his face. He did not wipe it away. "The repair is holding," Dr. Monroe said. "We still have several critical hours ahead of us, but she made it through the most dangerous part." Adrian opened his eyes. "Can I see her?" "Not yet. When she is stable enough." Dr. Monroe looked at Grace's sling and then at their joined hands. "You both need to sit down." Adrian almost laughed. It came out as a broken breath. Grace guided him back to the chairs. They sat beneath the clock while the hospital moved around them. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Adrian said, 43 seconds. Grace looked at him. That is how long she was gone. She came back. Because strangers were pressing their hands against her heart. Because she fought. His gaze lowered to Grace's bandaged shoulder. "So did you." Grace leaned back carefully. "I was terrified. That did not stop you." It almost did, but it did not. Adrian looked toward the operating room doors. "I spent years believing courage meant never allowing fear close enough to touch me." Grace followed his gaze. "Fear touched you anyway." "Yes." "And you stayed." He turned toward her. "You told Lily that angels fight scared," she asked. "Were you speaking about yourself?" Grace looked down at their hands. "I was speaking about anyone who keeps moving when running would be easier." Adrian lifted her fingers and pressed them against his mouth. There was no performance in the gesture, only gratitude too large for words. Across the city, Jonah Reed stood at the edge of a private airfield while red and blue lights spread across the runway. Victor Sloan waited beside a black sedan. 2 federal vehicles blocked the main exit. State investigators surrounded the hangar. Victor's plane remained dark behind him. He watched Jonah approach. "You came alone?" "No." Victor looked at the agents moving between the buildings. His expression hardened. Adrian sent the law. Adrian sent evidence. Victor smiled without warmth. He used to send bullets. He has a daughter in surgery, so he stayed. Jonah stopped several feet away. "Yes." Victor looked toward the city. "That waitress destroyed him." "No." Jonah's voice remained calm. She gave him a reason not to destroy himself. Victor glanced at the officers. His pilots had already surrendered. 2 men from his security team were lying face down near the hangar. His financial manager stood beside an investigator with his hands cuffed. Victor's phone had stopped ringing 20 minutes earlier. The accounts were frozen. The partners had vanished. The men who once promised loyalty were offering testimony before sunrise. Victor looked back at Jonah. "Cross will regret this." Jonah studied him. "Adrian spent years being exactly the man you understood." He nodded toward the waiting agents. "That is why you lost." Victor's smile disappeared. An officer stepped forward and placed him under arrest. Jonah watched until the car doors closed. Then he called the hospital. Grace answered Adrian's phone. "It is done," Jonah said. "Victor alive, in custody." Grace looked toward Adrian. He sat beside Lily's recovery room behind a glass wall, his head bowed near the bed. "He stayed," Grace said. Jonah was silent for a moment. "Yes." Grace ended the call and entered the room. Lily looked impossibly small beneath the blankets. Tubes ran from her arms. Machines measured every fragile rhythm. Adrian sat beside her with one hand resting near hers, careful not to disturb the wires. "She will wake slowly," Grace said. "I know. You should sleep." "No. You have been awake for 2 days." "I am aware." Grace lowered herself into the chair across from him. Adrian looked at the bandage on her shoulder. "You should not be here. Neither should you. This is my daughter. She asked both of us not to let go." His eyes moved to Lily. Grace reached across the bed and placed her hand beside his. They waited. Near dawn, Lily's fingers moved. Adrian stood so quickly that the chair struck the wall. "Lily." Her eyelids opened. The gray eyes were unfocused at first. Then they found him. "Daddy." His face broke again. "I am here." Lily looked toward Grace. "You stayed." Grace smiled. So did he. Lily's gaze returned to Adrian. "Did you go after the wolf? No." "Why?" He took her hand. "Because you needed me here." Lily considered the answer through the fog of medication. Then she closed her eyes again. Good. One word. Quiet. Enough to change him more completely than fear ever had. Recovery came slowly. Lily remained in the hospital for 3 weeks. The first time she sat upright without help, Adrian called Dr. Monroe twice to make sure it was allowed. The first time she walked 6 steps down the corridor, every guard nearby pretended not to watch. Grace healed beside her. The wound in her shoulder closed though movement remained painful. Jonah brought her training notes to the hospital and claimed she was falling behind. Grace told him she had been shot. He said that was not a permanent excuse. Lily laughed so hard that Dr. Shaw entered the room to check her pulse. Adrian spent every night beside the bed. He took meetings from the corridor and refused to leave the hospital grounds. Men who once waited in private clubs for his orders now stood beneath fluorescent lights while he signed documents beside vending machines. The city noticed. Some believed he had weakened. Others understood that his priorities had changed. Adrian cared less about which conclusion frightened them. When Lily was finally released, the Cross estate had been repaired. The shattered marble was replaced. The damaged paintings were restored. New cameras covered every corridor. Grant Keller remained in federal custody after giving evidence against Victor and several corrupt officials. Adrian never visited him. That choice surprised Jonah more than anything else. Grace returned to her apartment one final time. May accompanied her, though Grace suspected Adrian had sent 3 vehicles to watch the building from different streets. The room looked smaller than she remembered. The mattress remained beneath the broken window. The eviction notice still lay on the floor. Grace packed her clothes, her mother's photograph, and the chipped coffee mug she had used every morning. Everything else fit inside 2 boxes. Ruth Delaney appeared in the doorway. She looked at Grace's sling. "You get yourself into trouble." Grace smiled. "Yes." Ruth glanced through the window at the black vehicle parked below. Rich trouble. Complicated trouble. Ruth stepped inside and touched Grace's cheek. "You look different." "I sleep sometimes." "That will do it." Grace handed her a grocery bag and a new winter coat. Ruth frowned. "I cannot take this." Grace closed her fingers around the coat. "Pride is expensive." Ruth stared at her. Then she laughed. "You remember everything, only the things that kept me alive." Grace also returned to the silver crown. She did not ask Adrian to interfere. She submitted the messages Brent had sent, photographs of the changed schedules, and written statements from 2 other waitresses. Once Grace spoke first, more women followed. Brent was removed, pending investigation. At the Desert Star, she filed a complaint over unpaid wages and illegal deductions. Stan called her ungrateful. Grace looked at the diner floor where she had almost died. "I am grateful I survived you." Then she walked out beneath the broken neon star and never returned. At the estate, Adrian waited in his study. Grace found 2 documents on the desk. One was her original employment contract. The other transferred her position to an independent trust established for Lily's care. Adrian would no longer control Grace's salary, housing, or medical insurance. Grace read every page. "You are ending my contract. I am ending my control over it." She looked up. "Why?" "You said you would not become another thing I owned." "I remember. I need to know that staying does not cost you your freedom." Grace looked toward the windows. "And if I leave the gates open?" "No one follows me?" "No. No threats?" "No. No obstacles removed without permission." Adrian's mouth almost smiled. "I will resist the temptation." Grace closed the folder. Then she walked toward the door. Adrian's face became still. She placed her hand on the handle, opened it, then closed it again. "I am staying." He released a breath. For Lily, Grace crossed the room. Not only for Lily. He touched her face. This time there was no contract between them, no debt, no fear of what leaving might cost. Grace kissed him because she chose to. Months passed. Adrian began dismantling the parts of his empire that could one day place Lily in the same danger. Weapons routes closed. Illegal accounts disappeared. Evidence against bribed officers reached investigators through channels no one could trace. Some of Adrian's men left. Others stayed because loyalty no longer required pretending cruelty was strength. Jonah warned him that he was surrendering power. Adrian stood at the garden window watching Lily practice riding a bicycle. "Then, I surrender it." The Isabel Cross Foundation opened before spring. It paid for travel, housing, and treatment for families with children facing heart surgery. Grace helped design the program. She remembered hospital bills, eviction notices, and coffee chosen over food. No parent who entered the foundation office was asked to prove they deserved kindness. Lily began attending school 3 mornings each week. On her first day, she stood beside the car with her backpack held against her chest. What if they do not like me? Grace knelt. Then they have poor judgment. What if I say something strange? You will. Lily's eyes widened. So will they? Adrian adjusted one of her backpack straps, then the other, then the first again. Lily looked at him. Daddy, you are making it crooked. He released the bag. She kissed his cheek and walked toward the school entrance. Adrian took one step after her. Grace caught his sleeve. Let her. They watched Lily enter the building alone. The following winter, the Fremont lights returned. Adrian arranged security at a distance. He did not empty the streets. He did not close the festival. Families moved beneath glowing arches. Vendors poured hot chocolate into paper cups. Children chased bubbles through the cold night air. Lily stood between Grace and Adrian. For a moment she said nothing. Then she looked up at the lights she had once risked everything to see. They are better outside the window. Grace smiled. They usually are. A girl from Lily's school called her name. Lily looked at Adrian. Every instinct in him tightened. He released her hand. Go. Lily ran into the crowd. Adrian watched until she disappeared behind a family carrying balloons. Grace slipped her hand into his. You are terrified. Yes. And he found Lily again beneath an arch of golden light. She was laughing with other children, and she is living. That night, Lily revealed a new painting in Isabel's studio. 3 figures stood beneath a city of lights. The man still had black wings. The woman's pale wings still carried scars. The child's silver wings were open. There was no wolf. There were no walls. Adrian studied the canvas. What happened to the house? Lily smiled. It is behind us. Because we know the way home. Outside the studio, the estate remained guarded. The gates still stood. The cameras still turned. But the curtains were open. Music moved through the halls. A child's laughter reached every room. Grace once believed survival meant reaching the next morning alone. Then she stopped for a dying girl in the rain and discovered that the most dangerous door she had ever opened was also the one that led her home.